Hi, I'm Kat, and today I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to make the Clara dress, an easy, beginner-friendly dress for your toddler.
Let's start by pressing our fabric and laying out our pattern pieces. So pay attention if it says to cut and fold, you want your fabric to be doubled over and the straight line of the pattern piece to be along the folded edge. Once you have all your pattern pieces, I'd like you to zigzag stitch around all of the pieces aside from the neckline bias binding. Let's make our bias binding by folding the strip of fabric in half lengthways and press. Then use the new middle crease as your guide and fold in the top raw edge toward the middle and press that again. Repeat for the bottom edge and then press the whole thing in half lengthways. So remember, pressing is just setting your iron down gently rather than gliding across the fabric. Popped this to the side for later on, and we're going to move on to the back panels. So I want you to turn your back panel so the wrong side of the fabric is facing you, and grab a ruler or use the pattern piece to measure in 1 inch and fold that inward. Then press that the whole way down with your iron. Repeat this exact same step for the other back panel. Here's a wee visual layout of all the pieces that you should have. So 1 front, 2 back, 2 sleeves, and your bias binding that you have already made. Secure that back folded edge with a straight stitch the whole way down, just 1 inch in. You see that these can now overlap and they will line up perfectly with your front panel. Right sides together, we're going to stitch across both shoulders just using our 1 centimeter seam allowance with a straight stitch. Once you finish this, take it over to your iron and press open those seams. This is what will give it a really crisp, polished finish. Now time for the neckline, so take your bias binding, find the midpoint and pin that in place into the center of the neckline. This is the wrong side of the fabric, so line up the raw edge of the binding and the raw edge of the neckline. Take this on over to your machine and leave 1 centimeter at the opening of the back, and then we will start stitching along the first crease in our binding. As you can see, I'm really adjusting the fabric underneath as I go. If it is flat underneath the needle, then there will be no puckers. So just take your time with this and make sure that you flatten everything out as you go along. To make sure those ends are finished off really nicely, we are going to tuck them inside before stitching the right side. So I'm going to make 2 little diagonal cuts here to remove some of the bulk, fold it over, and then I am going to fold over the binding to the right side. Then as I stitch along the top, I am going to just catch that inner edge as neatly as I can to secure the binding to the rest of the neckline. Next up, we're on to the sleeves. So we are going to gather the sleeves by doing what is called a basting stitch. So with that, I am going to turn my machine tension to the lowest it can go, and I am going to make my stitch length the longest that it can go. I'm going to leave long threads at the back of my machine, and I am not going to do a back stitch, so I can easily pull these threads out after we have finished with the gather. So I am going to start stitching along with a 1/2 centimeter seam allowance for this, and again leave long thread tails at the end, and I am going to repeat that to do the exact same thing underneath, so just another line of basting stitches. Pull on the top threads of those basting stitches to start gathering the fabric, and when you feel it lines up with where your armholes are on your pattern, I want you to take the sleeve and lie it on top of the right side of the dress. So it's really important, right sides together for this. And feel free to find the middle point of your sleeve to match up with that shoulder seam. Just make sure that you have enough gather in the middle, but also fabric to reach the side of the armholes. Let's stitch that on again using our 1 centimeter seam allowance, starting at one side of the armhole and going the whole way across to the other. As you can see, I am really taking my time here to make sure everything is smooth and flattened out underneath. Once that you're happy that it is secure, you can remove your basting stitches just by pulling on those threads. So repeat that entire process of basting stitches, gathering and attaching for your other sleeve. Next, let's hem the sleeve by folding 1 centimeter in and using a straight stitch the whole edge along, and then we have to measure out our elastic. So in the instruction guide there is a little table on how much I recommend per age. Cut 2 of these, and then 4 centimeters in from the edge of the sleeve we are going to start stitching that on. So I have some elastic stitches on my machine. You might do too if you have a little look, but if not, then use a zigzag or a straight stitch to secure that on. So as you just stitch along the elastic, make sure that you are stretching that as you go. And again, just remember to hem and pop on the elastic to your other sleeve. So right sides together, we are going to close up the base of the sleeve and along the side of the dress. So really simple with a straight stitch, we are going to use our 1 centimeter seam allowance and just close those up. Make sure you press those seams open, and then we are going to hem the bottom of the dress, just again a really simple 1 centimeter hem. We are so close to being finished, but we need to figure out how we are going to fasten this dress. So you've got 2 options. I choose buttons, but you can also use snap fastenings if you don't want to bother with buttonholes. Using a buttonhole foot, I sew 3 buttonholes at the top, middle and back of the back opening. I then use a fabric pen to mark the center point after I have cut these buttonholes open, and I sew on 3 buttons by hand. I like to finish off with a little personalised label. There is a label guide on how to make these within your instruction guide, and I just think it is the perfect finishing touch for your personalised handmade projects. And now you have a beautiful finished dress. I would absolutely love to see these. So if you have made one and you'd like to tag me, please find all my info in the description box below, because there's nothing that brings me more joy than to see all of your creations. Thank you so much.